at some point you have to deal with things. If not, they build and build and build. The inevitable was the divorce. I mean, we were going to get divorced. 14 months ago, if we'd have found you, I wouldn't be here where I'm at right now.
Have you been wondering how to break free from the affair once and for all? Now's the time to take back your life, your emotions, find happiness, joy, and fulfillment with your marriage. HealingBrokenTrust.com is the place where you can find resources to take the healing journey to the next level. You'll find incredible resources for every stage of your affair recovery journey. Connect with our team of qualified affair recovery therapists who stay current with the ever-growing, ever-changing affair recovery research that's available to help you heal wherever you are in the process. Take our home study course focused on helping you communicate and express yourself in a way that gets you what you want. You can also book an incredible one-on-one intensive retreat where instead of dragging out the pain over months or years, you can condense the time it takes to heal in just a matter of days using scientifically proven methods that work to help couples lower their guard, let go of the fear, melt the anger, and experience each other at a deep emotional level you may have never experienced before. So what are you waiting for? Go to HealingBrokenTrust.com. But don't take our word for it. Read the client letters and listen to the reviews on the HealingBrokenTrust.com website. At the end of this episode, you'll hear directly from a couple whose relationship was transformed because they worked with Brad. So go to HealingBrokenTrust.com and we'll talk to you soon. Hello and welcome to Healing Broken Trust podcast with your hosts, Brad and Morgan Robinson. We're excited to be here with you today to help you heal your relationship after infidelity. So, Brad, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk about post-traumatic growth, what that is, what it looks like, and how to attain it. Okay. And honestly, Morgan, I'm really excited to be talking about this. This is probably one of my top 2 favorite subjects in the affair recovery, discussions. And we haven't even got to the second one yet. And so we've been talking about all these things. The thing that I love probably even more than this is bonding events, which we haven't talked about in any of our podcasts yet.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what podcast number we're on. We're in our 20s, but here we are, really getting to some stuff that's some of my favorite topics to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm really happy about that.
For couples to bond and go through that, those change events.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that later. We haven't, like we said in our very first podcast, that this was a radio show that we had done. And, we'd edit it into podcast format. But this is our first live recorded podcast,
right?
Because some of those recordings are actually like 3, maybe almost 4 years old by now.
That's right, yeah.
And so it's really exciting just to kind of bring you guys newer information, just different things that we haven't talked about before. And since that time, post-traumatic growth and bonding events are 2 of my most favorite topics that we didn't even record anything on when we had the radio show.
Yeah, because research and the training and all the information and the knowledge just gets better and better and better.
Experience.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And with post-traumatic growth, this is what that really is. It's been defined as a positive change experienced as a result of the struggle with a major life crisis or traumatic event. So it's this positive change that you experience as a result of major pain, of major setbacks. And what's really important with this, Morgan, is to understand that the normal response for human beings when they face trauma and crisis and pain isn't to go under, but actually to become better. And the usual response is resilience and growth, not defeat in the face of adversity. And so sometimes that's our normal response, is to have that, like to go under.
Yeah.
But we can we can rise above it, and that's the normal response. There's things that we can help ourselves experience post-traumatic growth quicker, so we don't have to go through all this, up and down roller coaster ride, but we can get there much quicker.
Right.
And that's really what this whole thing's about, is getting there. So it's not something that rarely happens. It's something that it's not unusual for people to bounce back from infidelity. And to be honest with you, when two people are in my office and they want to make it work, I'm surprised when they don't make it work.
Right.
Like when they really want to make it work, and the one who had the affair has cut off the affair, and they're being honest, and the one who got betrayed is scared to trust, but they're willing to trust and willing to let their guard down again. I think people always work through those situations.
Right.
And so I'm surprised if somebody doesn't work through it when you're willing to put it into work and what it takes.
Yeah, so what you're saying is the norm for couples who experience infidelity that you've worked with is to rebuild with a stronger wood, to grow with deeper roots, to build on rock instead of on sand, right? That they're gaining that closeness, they're gaining that security with each other that they've maybe never experienced before. And so infidelity was just that catalyst that caused them to reach deeper, to grow stronger, as a couple.
Absolutely.
And as individuals, I imagine.
Yeah, well, the thing is people are tempted to throw in the towel, but when they don't, they resurrect with something greater.
Absolutely.
They rise from the ashes with some scars, of course, but also new confidence in their marriage and in themselves, that they could literally overcome anything as a couple.
Absolutely.
Which is a great place to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes betrayal causes people to really recognize what matters in life, what matters to them spiritually, their marriage matters to them. Time with my kids, being a better parent matters to me.
Yeah.
People have a wake-up call with these kinds of things.
It kind of can pull you out of being selfish, too. A little bit more selfless at the end.
Yeah, well, for both spouses.
Yeah.
Instead of letting little things waste their time, they found ways to spend more time with each other, and they realized if they lose their spouse, they lost everything. As a result, there's a new appreciation for their spouse.
Yeah, absolutely. And so really this is a milestone that a couple should shoot for, that's entirely within their reach, right? As you've mentioned and we've mentioned in this podcast, creating secure emotional bonds is really the best method for preventing an affair, and it's also the best intervention for repairing your bond after betrayal. And so this post-traumatic growth is really something that you can achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and let me say this too, like part of those, securing emotional bonds, and we're going to talk about this later, and really listen for that, because it's one podcast you don't want to miss. It's one episode you don't want to miss. And I think, honestly, it's probably going to be the most important topic that we discuss.
Right.
Because it's really going to talk about how to really gain lasting healing long-term. Being transparent. Those are early steps that you have to have so you can, get out of the discovery phase and get into the trust building phase of a relationship.
Right.
So you got to be, transparent, and you got to be honest and open. But that alone doesn't cause people to truly heal. And what people need to heal is they need to go to the depth of their vulnerability and just be emotionally naked and say, here I am with all my blemishes. Here I am emotionally naked with you. Do you still want me? Do you still like me?
And then for their spouse to be able to respond to that in a loving, healing, caring way.
And that's what brings about the true change. And there's 3 different areas that takes place in. And a lot of people find it very hard to do on their own. So we always recommend working with a marriage counselor. We've got 2 locations in Oklahoma. You're welcome to fly out and visit with us, or, visit our therapist in Oklahoma City, the team out there. These are folks that are trained in how to help couples work through this.
And of course, you can find out more information at healingbrokentrust.com for that. But we're not trying to sell you on that.
No, not at all. But I want you guys to be aware of that.
Right.
Because there is something that's kind of a next level deeper that I'm shocked that nobody really talks about.
Right.
Some of the best-selling books on infidelity, nobody really talks about that. And so, in fact, we haven't talked about it so far.
Right, coming to visit
bonding
us.
Events, yeah. Well, I'm talking about bonding events too.
Bonding events, yeah.
But post-traumatic growth isn't something that's rare. It's actually very frequent but it isn't something that happens on its own.
Right.
So we have to work with it.
Yeah.
We must put ourselves in a position to bounce back from adversity. We must do the right things to rise from this crisis. And that's what this podcast has always been about. It's about giving you the necessary tools to bounce back and experience post-traumatic growth.
Absolutely. And so many times the door to growth in life is also the same path that's marked with suffering, right? So we kind of have to go through the fire to be refined in some ways. Mm-hmm. Pain is what causes us to change and change for the better, right? It's always kind of uncomfortable to make that change and but that's how we make the change, is going through it, not trying to avoid it, because that's when we start to get depressed, or we get anxious, or we get angry. If we push away the change or the
absolutely,
the feelings.
You got to ask yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this?
Right.
How can this make me a better person? I may be getting ahead of myself, but I always like to ask myself, how can I not let this suffering go to waste? How can I capitalize on this? And we were just talking about that this morning with something else completely different. But just something in our lives, if we're going to go through this experience again, what can we learn from it? Let's reflect on this and discuss it and write down our conclusions so that we don't make the same mistakes again. And you have to do that to experience post-traumatic growth, because it's not always automatic. It's normal to experience it, and you can experience it even if you're in hell right now, but you've got to work with it to get there. It's not something that happens on its own. And so something that I learned that helped me, build resilience, and when I'm facing adversity, is oftentimes I'll think back to the story of Joseph in the Bible. Remember the first time I heard about that, I think I might have been a teenager. Maybe heard it when I was younger, but I remember hearing the story of Joseph in the Bible, where he gets sold into slavery by his brothers. They grew tired of him. He was kind of a prideful young man. He was his dad's favorite, and his dad let everybody know about it. And he ends up in Egypt after spending time in their prison. He becomes a high-ranking member of their government. And it's at that point he sees his brothers again who betrayed him. There was a famine that caused many people to starve in that region, and Joseph was in charge of managing the food supplies. And close to the end of Joseph's life, he was in a position to kill his brothers, but he did something remarkable instead. He forgave his brothers, and this is what he said. And I think this is one of the most profound things written in the whole Bible. He said, this is what Joseph said to his brothers: "When you sold me into slavery, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today from the famine that occurred." And so I think that's really important. Like Joseph was saying, if we could bring that into kind of maybe more modern vernacular, he was saying, you guys meant it for evil. What you intended to do was to kill me or murder me or just get you out of your life.
Or hurt me.
You hurt me beyond repair. And sometimes that's what people do when they betray their spouses. It's the deepest wound I think people can go through. And, I've talked about how I've had people who've been shot at before. I've had people who've gone through all kinds of ridiculous situations, who've consistently said being betrayed by their spouse was the worst thing they ever went through. And so anyway, back to, but what this is saying is you meant it for evil, but God meant it to bring about greater good.
Right.
And I think that's a key reason that we suffer. And I'm not a theologian, and obviously there's people listening with different beliefs than us. We respect those beliefs.
Absolutely. Or
no beliefs at all, and that's fine too. But you have to have a belief that life is happening for you, not against you.
Right.
And you have to believe that things are working for good and they're moving you towards your goals, even when it feels like a setback. You have to really believe that.
Absolutely.
Because if you do, post-traumatic growth is going to be easier. One of the wrong conclusions to make is to close your heart up after you get betrayed.
Right.
Naturally, you're not going to trust your spouse. Sometimes people do the most hellacious things when they betray their spouse, involved in so much deception. That's going to be normal to not trust your spouse again. I'm not saying be an idiot and just blindly trust your spouse again. Use your own common sense. But what I'm trying to say is, don't kind of assign the whole world as cursed or broken or fallen, or you can't trust anybody else again. When I got betrayed before I met Morgan, I had learned the wrong lesson from that betrayal. I had said, you know what, I put all my eggs in one basket. I don't need to ever really give my heart to someone ever again completely. I need to kind of keep a little bit back for myself. I learned the wrong lesson in that. And, it's only later that I, after kind of doing this for a living, that I kind of realized, you know what, there's still a part of me that I kind of held back, and I gotta recognize that. But that was a wrong lesson to learn. And so people oftentimes learn lessons like that. I think that's the wrong lesson to learn. So anyway, you've got to have this belief, no matter what your spiritual values are or your beliefs are, you've got to come to the place where you realize life is happening for me to move me towards my goals, and it's happening to make me better and to bring about good in my life and good in the lives of others.
Right. So I'm going to take this opportunity to, while I'm hurting, yes, I'm hurting, but I'm going to take this opportunity to grow and to find the silver lining, no matter how hard. And if you have the days where you don't feel like there's anything good, don't worry. It takes some effort. It takes some time. If you have a terrible, terrible day, just take it. Okay, it's just a terrible day. Tomorrow will be better. And you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps in some ways emotionally and just say, you know what, this is a bad day. It's going to be a bad day today. That's okay.
And it's okay to have bad days.
Yes.
That's normal.
Absolutely.
And let me say this, Morgan.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about wishful thinking,
right,
or
shoving down feelings.
or shoving down feelings or denying reality or things like that. What we're talking about is it's more of a choice. I'm choosing to look at things this way, yes, and believe that eventually good's going to come out of this.
Yes.
Because when I got betrayed, I did not see any good coming out of that. I had put on about 30 pounds in 10 months. I did not see how anything positive was going to come out of this. At that point in my life, I wasn't doing marriage counseling, obviously. I wasn't helping couples yet. But I didn't even see how, I can see God's hand now in it. Like, look what I do now for a living. Like, right? I'm an international expert on betrayal and helping people work through it. But if I didn't have that experience and didn't really know what it felt like myself, I think I would severely lack a lot of the compassion and empathy yeah, of what it's like. Because it just, part of you dies when you go through stuff like that.
Right.
And it took me a while to fully get that back. I was arrogant. I didn't go do therapy like I needed to. I was worried about what they were going to tell me, that it was based on my childhood, because your parents divorced, that's why this bothers you so much. And, I was worried about, what the therapist would think of me, that I didn't go get the help that I needed.
Right.
And a lot of people do that, but this is definitely an appropriate time to go get help. This is almost like a personal 9/11 or a personal terrorist attack. This is something that nobody would question you if you went to therapy after a terrorist attack.
Right. Like
the people in 9/11 and how god-awful and terrible that was. Nobody looks at them and says, you're weak for going to talk to somebody, or you're weak to go get help. But this is the same thing. Like, you're not weak to go talk to a therapist. You're not weak to go see a marriage counselor. It's a totally appropriate time to do it. And so go. Because part of therapy is part of how you get to that post-traumatic growth. And so I'm getting a little off our notes, so I'm going to get back to our notes. But one of the things that typically people have to achieve post-traumatic growth is really develop their spiritual roots. So you got to develop your spiritual roots, whatever they are, because that sometimes enables us to see a larger picture. It allows us to see a grander plan. My mother, she had cancer. It just came back this past maybe 18 months, and she tripped and fell in the shower and hurt herself pretty bad. But she went to the doctor. She's approaching 70, so she went to the doctor, got it checked out, and it turns out they did some scans, and it turns out the breast cancer that she had 10 years ago, had maybe 9 or 10 years ago, had returned, and it actually had spread to her lungs.
Right, and they wouldn't have known that had she not fallen in the shower.
Yeah, had she not fallen in the shower and kind of bruised the rib. And so, that's kind of a microcosm. That's obviously not maybe your story. Your story is my spouse has cheated on me, or it's I've cheated on my spouse, and I might have done it multiple times, or they might have done it to me multiple times. But you've got to believe that there's something greater working on your behalf. There's God, he's working on your behalf to bring about good. And so my mother gets it checked out, and they're able to give her some drugs, and they're making a lot of really good advances with cancer now. But if she hadn't found that, she didn't trip and fall, she might be dead right now.
Yeah, that's very true.
And we just had our first child. That would have been
really sad.
Yeah, it would have been terrible.
Yeah, and so like you may be at home thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe they caught me cheating, or they caught me in the lie, or they saw these text messages, and it's like, it's very embarrassing and it's very hurtful, and you may be thinking, oh my gosh, my life is over. But, if you talk to someone on the other side of the healing process, they'd say, well, thank God that they found these text messages. I wish I had, told them myself, but thank God they found this, because now I have this weight lifted off of me. We can actually start rebuilding the marriage. They're actually, so it doesn't seem like it's this wonderful gift, but in the end.
Absolutely. And you got to have a long-term perspective with this.
Right.
Like, because for several years I did not even see, like, what's the plan with me getting betrayed.
Right.
And not everybody who gets betrayed is going to turn out to be a marriage counselor. But you have to have an others focus to get off, Tony Robbins, I like that guy. He says that, you're really, the root of your suffering is that you're too focused on yourself. Mm-hmm. So go out and help other people. I think a lot of suffering happens to actually help us love better.
Yeah.
Jesus taught us to love our neighbor as ourselves. I think a lot of suffering happens because it's really meant to make us more compassionate and empathetic, right, and love other people more.
Yeah, and what is depression? It's anger turned inwards, right? Well, if we can pull out of ourselves and we can go and look at other people, maybe you start focusing on your kids, how are they feeling during this time? Focusing on maybe volunteering or kind of getting out there and loving others, like Brad is saying. It can really do a lot to pull you out of the depression, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one idea.
Yeah, and so, let me get back to our notes. Right. Kind of getting off a little bit, but
yes.
So the people who are able to bounce back and experience post-traumatic growth, they're able to see the good that has been produced by their suffering. They may not be able to see it right away because of the pain and the trauma of the betrayal is too great. But they know that they are suffering because it's for their greater good, and unseen forces are working on their behalf. Mm-hmm. As crazy as it sounds, when I experience setbacks or failure, and I don't do this always as quickly as I would like, but something I have tried to make it a habit of is to say to myself over and over again, this is good, because it allows me to see my options.
Yes.
Because you can get stuck in a negative situation and just see
it all crumbling.
Well, you just see you're focused on the failure.
Yeah.
And what you're focused on is going to determine your attitude and the mood you're in. And again, sometimes some hurts are just so big. And most people who get betrayed, I would probably say 99.9% of them are not able to do what I just mentioned. So if you can't do that, that's okay. Like, one of you maybe listening can do that. We've got a lot of people listening to us all over the world. And so if you can't do that, that's okay. But try to get to that point eventually where you can say, you know what, this has been a good thing for us. This has been a good thing for me. Even if it's kind of tearing your family apart, you've got to have, see the good in the situation, focus on the good. But you also have to, and we haven't discussed, well, I think I did, but you've got to talk to somebody about this stuff to really get the full effect of post-traumatic growth.
Right.
Like, you've got to do work on yourself. And that's something that I've had to do to work through the hurts I've experienced.
Me as well.
Yeah, Morgan, you've had to do that.
Yeah. And even if in the beginning this is good, I woke up this morning, this is good, I've gotten up out of bed this morning, I am on my feet this morning, I'm eating breakfast, yes, this is good. Like, even the small things, start with the small things. I'm not crying this very moment, this is good, right? Like, thinking about those moment by moment situations, because life may not feel good, but you woke up this morning, so that's good.
Yeah. Morgan, something
yes,
that we talk about often is when we're going through something bad. Obviously, this is good, but it's that idea of, let's not let this suffering go to waste.
Right.
Like, what can we learn from this? Let's talk about it. Let's write down our conclusions. Let's type it up so that I'll keep it and kind of be able to reflect on it and go back to it. Because it's like, what am I supposed to learn out of this?
Right.
What is God trying to tell me through this?
And what you meditate on most of the time is what you kind of bring about in your day, you know. So renewing your mind with some truth is really helpful.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I think an attitude like that lends itself to post-traumatic growth.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're not trying to offer up cliches, but things like what we're talking about here have really helped us. And so actually it was over a year ago that we had went on vacation with your dad. And
a couple of years ago.
That's right.
It was a few years.
Oh, dear Lord, has it been that long? Yeah. Time, my goodness, time flies. And we took him along because he was, just getting older, and we wanted to make some memories before he passed. And the first day on the trip, he shared with us that he had bladder cancer, right?
He started to pee blood.
That's right.
And he showed me his urine, and this is a little disgusting, but it looked like pink lemonade. You could see like flesh coming through his urine.
Yeah.
And it looked like part of the, lemonade. And so obviously our vacation after
wasn't
that,
very relaxing.
Yeah, it wasn't very relaxing at all. And my dad at that age was 74, went through 2 rounds of chemo, and they didn't think he was going to make it. I really thought my dad was going to die.
Yeah.
And so he eventually had to have his bladder removed. And that whole process lasted about a year. Very scary for us. I didn't want to let the suffering go to waste, so I took this as an opportunity to grow from it. And I wanted to learn something from this. Mm-hmm. And what I learned from that was, I need to have an active and healthy lifestyle myself. I went up to where he was getting chemo at, and everybody in there was overweight that day. Mm-hmm. And I guess, and I'm not a cancer expert, but from my understanding is that most individuals who tend to get cancer tend to be more overweight and obese. And so it made me really take my health as a priority. My dad had been a Green Beret, Special Forces, and I was a few years older than him,
right.
By the time he had gotten out. And so, but I was in a completely different physical shape than him. And this is him at 74, overweight, and this is me in my,
his age back when he got out of Green
Beret.
Yeah,
yeah, he's like tip-top shape, physically fit, and I'm like couch potato, don't really do anything physically. But that led me to changing my habits, and it resulted in me losing 35 pounds.
Yeah, because you're thinking, oh my gosh, he was like way in better shape when he was my age.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, I'm only going to get worse if I let it go down.
If I don't do anything, there has to be an intervention.
Yeah.
And so, and that was a good experience for my dad. It helped him grow spiritually in a way that he never had before. It was a good experience for me health-wise. In some ways, it was a good thing for our relationship because I got to talk to him about things I probably never would have talked to him about. And so, but it gave me a new perspective, in life. It made me want to be here for my own kids. It was a wake-up call. Post-traumatic, those are some examples of my own life with my dad, the whole thing that I became, becoming a marriage counselor, working with infidelity. I don't think this podcast would be here had I not gotten betrayed. I wouldn't have been fascinated by betrayal.
This is really interesting as you're talking about your story. It might be good for me to share a piece of my story because I was also betrayed, a while back. And, I've had to think through, well, how did I gain any post-traumatic growth from that? But I do realize now that, sure, I experienced a lot of shame, a lot of personal shame. And I remember my self-esteem just was shot. It was in the toilet. And but looking back now, I think, you know what? I dumped him. I broke up with him, even though he had cheated on me, and I didn't realize, that I walked out that day when he got angry and whatever. So at that moment, I was able to stand up for myself in a way that I hadn't been able to stand up for myself before. And so I didn't realize it at that time. I didn't see that there was some kind of strength there that I was learning and gaining. But many years later, which is now, I can look back and say, you know what? I learned to put my foot down and value myself in a way that I hadn't really valued myself. And so you can maybe say that's a post-traumatic growth experience. I mean, I had a lot of growing to do after that, but that was the first step to me saying, you know what, I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to accept being treated like this.
Well, it's maybe the first time that you really recognized that it's okay to stand up for your needs.
Yes.
And assert yourself in that way.
Absolutely.
And have healthy boundaries.
And of course, we weren't married. It was a dating relationship. So I know that just dumping someone is not necessarily the easiest and or the right choice for everyone.
But yeah, you were much younger than you are now.
Yes. Different situation.
Different stage of life.
Right.
You probably weren't as attached as you would be to somebody that you're married to.
Right. I didn't have children with the person. Yeah. It wasn't anything like that. So I don't suggest people to just drop them and walk out the door, because that's not your situation all the time. You may be a different situation, but the point that is, you can stand up for yourself and stand up for what you need and stand up for your self-worth and stand up for what matters to you, which is your health, emotional health, physical health, mental health, and say, you know what, I'm not going to accept this. And if you want this relationship to work, if you want this to work, I'm going to put my foot down and say, we need counseling. I need this, I need that, because sometimes people just don't know how to do that. And maybe you're like me, maybe this is a moment for you to step up and start deciding what you want and need in the relationship and asking for it. And again, you might need help to do that. So
yeah, I mean, don't go this alone. I mean, just I think our podcast is fantastic. I think what we talk about is stuff I really believe in, and
it's going to help you, even if you're in counseling. And go to our website. Yeah, we have resources.
Yeah,
there.
We got great stuff. Right. It's really stuff that we spend a lot of time putting our heart and soul into.
Great.
It's great, but I'm just saying that to illustrate the importance of going and talking with somebody who knows your situation, who's familiar with betrayal, how to heal from infidelity, who can work with you guys as a couple, if that's an option for you. Go do that, because that's so important.
And that's how post-traumatic growth comes about in the long run.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know this is something I'm sure is on a ticker tape going through your mind, but some of you might be thinking, Brad, you're nuts. Morgan, you're nuts. You don't know my situation. The person who betrayed me should be executed. I mean, sometimes you just might be really angry, and I totally understand.
Well, yeah, and sometimes people who betray their spouses are really bad people. Yeah. They can be really, but that's not everybody.
Yeah, that's not.
And sometimes we feel like they're a psychopath. They're not really a psychopath.
We're just hurting.
We're just hurting. Yeah. Or they're narcissistic and they're not really a narcissist. But the thing is this post-traumatic growth stuff works regardless of your situation.
Right.
It's a belief. It's an attitude.
Yeah, whether you stay together or not.
Yeah, yeah. But if you do stay together, it's something that will make your relationship stronger. It's really having one of those strong marriages where you feel emotionally safe and secure with each other.
Okay, so let's get to this kind of in a nutshell. What does it take to get to post-traumatic growth, Brad? Okay.
What it takes to get to post-traumatic growth is it's really a belief. It's a belief that life happens for you, not to you. Okay. It's a belief that when you suffer and you go through things, that greater good is coming out of it. It's a belief that setbacks are actually leading you towards your goals. Okay. So it's worth repeating. It's a belief that life happens for you, not to you. Right. It's a belief that when you suffer, when you go through painful things, that greater good is coming out of that. It's greater good for you, greater good for other people, but ultimately greater good. And it's a belief that setbacks, failures, pain are all moving you towards your goals in life.
Right.
You have to have that kind of belief so that you can start doing the things that are necessary to overcome this kind of trauma. This is, again, the hardest thing that people go through.
That attitude shift.
Yeah, it's that attitude shift. And I want to quote, going out of this podcast, I want to quote the founder of Domino's Pizza. I'm reading his biography called Pizza Tiger. Don't ask me why I'm reading it. I know it's random. You'd be surprised at the stuff I read.
Yeah. He's been really loving it. He reads
it's a great book.
Quotes from it all the time.
It's a great book. What I like about the book, and it was written, I think, in 86, and what I like about the book, and it's random, because Domino's, I don't even know how popular they are anymore as a pizza chain, but the guy became a billionaire. I'm really impressed with the things that he's doing now. He's pledged to give away all of his money. Mm-hmm. He's doing it to some great causes. And
one of the founders of Ave Maria University.
Yeah, right? Ave Maria University. Mm-hmm. But what's really great is his book. He's talking about all his failures, and you can see ultimately,
unabashedly too.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very transparent and very open.
Yeah.
But all these failures, he's living through this, and you're like, holy crap, he almost lost his company twice. He almost goes bankrupt twice. Some serious setbacks. And one of them is his attitude on failure is really revealing. And it's what allowed him to experience post-traumatic growth. And this is what he says, and we'll close with this. He said, failure is how we learn. Failure strengthens you to find the seed of benefit that every adversity contains. Your greatest strength is to turn adversity into advantage. Every time you suffer a setback, ask yourself, how can I turn this into something good?
Yeah, it's good.
So I might say that one more time because people may be driving. Failure is how we learn. Failure strengthens you to find the seed of benefit that every adversity contains. Your greatest strength is to turn adversity into advantage. Every time you suffer a setback, ask yourself, how can I turn this into something good? And that, my friends, is how you do post-traumatic growth.
Absolutely.
At some point you have to deal with things. If not, they build and build and build. The inevitable was the divorce. I mean, we were going to get divorced. 14 months ago, if we'd have found you, I wouldn't be here where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
You know, I went 3 months, I couldn't work. I couldn't sleep.
Wow.
I cried every night. I was depressed. I couldn't eat. Health started going downhill. You know, I couldn't put it in a box and let God take care of it.
Yeah.
You have to deal with your problems.
Yeah.
You don't deny them.
Yeah. Jim, did you feel like the other help that you got was dismissive of where you were coming
Exactly.
from?
That's the best way to explain it. Dismissive.
It was dismissive.
Yes.
It was,
Yes.
you know, are you going to cheat on me again? Oh, okay, you're not. Jim, you got to be satisfied with that.
Yeah.
That
That's
was
what they
kinda-
told me. That was one of the words. You have to be satisfied with that.
Yeah, I've heard that before from other people.
Yeah.
You just got to let go.
You can't build trust back on that.
Yeah.
Because when this happens, you feel so alone. And the main thing, and this is what impressed me about you, you listened. You listened to my needs, and then we started chiseling away at those things.
Jim, you actually felt like you were getting somewhere. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Proactive and reactive is the best way to describe how I felt about your actions. They were proactive, and you were reactive to my needs.
Yeah. Jim, I remember first time I met you, we met for 3 hours.
Yes.
And you really, how did that time go, that first time we met?
It seemed like 15 minutes, but I walked into your office. It was either come to your office or go see my attorney and get the divorce papers started.
Yeah.
I mean, I was ready to move on with my life.
Yeah.
I had had enough of feeling like this every day.
Yeah. Explain that what happens after an affair is made known, the person who's been betrayed many times develops symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very traumatic. That's something that happens when somebody's been raped, a victim of or survived a war or battle, natural disaster, an auto accident, witnessed somebody die in front of them. This happens when infidelity occurs, and what happens is it's very traumatic. There's not very many people who are skilled and that know how to help people through this, who know how to give hope, who know how to paint a roadmap, and who have experience in helping couples through this. And kind of what I've been talking about with Jim is I'm the third therapist that Jim has been to, third counselor that Jim's been to, and he went to these counselors more in the beginning of the process. Is that right, Jim?
Very beginning.
And now 14 months later, never got anywhere with it. And Jim is finally
just created more questions.
Just created more questions, more turmoil, coming closer to divorce. I want this to end. And Jim found me online, and for the first time has hope and relief, and knowing that it feels like things are better, things are getting better. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. Jim got stuck into a 14-month holding period because nobody gave him any good advice. They were dismissive of where he's coming from and basically told him just to shut up and be quiet to go along.
Accept it, move on with your life.
Just accept it and move on. And Jim, you found somebody who actually knew what they were talking about, knew how to deal with it, and we've done more in the last month.
The trauma, the first thing, and you said that to begin with. We have to deal with the trauma of this. That's so misdiagnosed. People don't understand the level of trauma that this creates.
Yeah.
It affects every aspect of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Jim, I like what you said earlier, just as far as the detail you gave. I like what you said. Sleep, eating, every area of my life.
Yeah.
Work, everything. There wasn't any, it was overwhelming.
That's a good way to describe it. It is. It's overwhelming. I've just went through 14 months of hell.
Yeah.
Through this, I've learned more about who my wife is. So I know better how to understand her and deal with issues that we have in the future. I can be more proactive towards our relationship instead of reactive to our relationship.
Yeah. Jim, let me ask you, what kind of help did you get along the way? Because you found out for about 14 months ago.
We've bought every book published. I've read almost every piece of information on the internet. But it's different at 3 o'clock in the morning with your eyes bloodshot and tears running down your face trying to read and digest this information. It's the third person effect going on. You're still alone. You're sitting in a dark room. You're looking at a computer screen. There's no personal feelings whatsoever being transferred. Your body language, your tone sets the stage for a harmonious transaction between your patients and yourself. The first thing you told us is you're not a judge. You're not here to beat people up. You're a referee. You're here to make sure that information that we need to know gets out there without anybody's feelings getting hurt or nobody fighting.
Yeah, I remember with your wife, I wanted to really drive it home that I'm going to be fair with her.
Yep. You did that at every meeting.
Yeah, I really wanted to let her know, because she's just a more timid type person. And I didn't want her to feel like she was being dominated, and I wanted to set the stage that this is going to be a respectful process. Give me feedback, because I don't want to be disrespectful either. Good marriage counseling requires that.
It's very important.
And I think...
that's the misperception that people go in to counseling. The affected party is looking for vindication. Like you talked about earlier, the willingness to forgive is the ability to quit punishing that person, okay? And when you go into marriage counseling, I think all of us are looking for, hey, this guy's going to be on my side. This person's going to be rooting for me. I got him in my corner. Let's beat her up and let's find some answers, or beat him up and find some answers. That didn't take place. What took place was a very comfortable place to be able to communicate very emotional things.
Yeah, so Jim, you were thinking, he's going to tell me I'm right, that I have the right to leave her, that I'm this, that I'm that.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for the first time here, was you to say, yeah, Jim, you're right, go get a divorce. That was what I prayed would come out of your mouth.
Oh, wow. What did you find instead?
Compassion, understanding. I don't know the word I could really want to use here. It's a harmony. We took chaos and kind of harmonized it a little bit to where we could do the tough things we needed to do. Let those emotions out. Dig for what we needed. Tell the truth. Be honest. Start building the trust back.
Yeah. Yeah. I needed hope. And
Yeah.
I've gotten hope.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that things are much better.
Oh, you didn't try to talk me out of anything.
Yeah.
You said, let's think about this. Not, you're going to. It's, let's think about this.
Yeah. Jim, with so you were kind of expecting me to be more of a judge, kind of not a referee or not a mediator or a peaceful. Not a healer. Maybe it's the right way to say it. Not somebody who's a healer, but somebody who's
I
telling
was
you,
looking for a judge, jury, and an executioner
say
when I
this is
walked
it.
in. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Jim, how do you feel about the blueprint to healing that we've had?
Well, you gave us a really good path that we were going to take to start with. You sat down and explained the steps. Listen to me diagnose the issues that were the most pressing to me in the beginning, and said this is what we've got to attack first, second, and third. If we don't attack this, we can't go to 2. We don't do 2 in the right order, we can't go to 3. And we're going to deal with each one of these issues, and we did. It worked perfectly.
Yeah. So it's before when we went to other counselors, we didn't have the order.
There was no path. There was no process. It's don't do it again. Let's pray about it.
Yeah. And Jim, it was even they would ask your wife, "Are you going to do this again?" And she responded, "No, I'm not." And then
He says they come back and like, see, everything's healed. God takes care of everything.
and
Right.
they expected you to be okay.
Yeah.
Jim, one of the things you mentioned earlier was they expected you to kind of put all these in the
Told me I
box.
need to forget about it. I needed to take these negative emotions, put them in a box, take them outside, bury them, and just that stuff's God will take care of that. Just go on with your life now.
Yeah. And that never got you any closure.
Oh no, it made things worse. Life is a wonderful thing. Get out there and live it. Going through this is an existence. It's a very miserable existence at most.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jim, for 14 months, I wasn't able to live.
No, I lived in a miserable existence of a life. And it was unnecessary. Because we didn't find the right people to help us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming to me. And
I appreciate the help.
yeah, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this audio recording.
It's been a pleasure.